and women who serve in the Air National Guard, including those in the 132nd Fighter Wing. The budget put forward by President Obama proposes disproportionate decreases to the Air National Guard. The Governor and I certainly appreciate the need for every level of government to reduce cost, just as we have done to balance the budget here in Iowa. That is why the proposed cuts to the National Guard are so frustrating, because it is a failure to provide real solution to the challenges before us. We need the most effective way to protect our people at the lowest possible cost. Excuse me. The simple truth is that the men and women of the Air National Guard are often the most experienced soldiers in our nation's military, and the cost of the Air National Guard are considerably lower than the cost of the active duty Air Force. Investing in the Air National Guard is a great way to deliver effective, efficient military capability. Just as many of the National Guard members served during the horrific flooding on the western side of the state. In fact, my own Senator Ernst, spent numerous hours working and protecting, walking the levees during the flood on the western side of the state. So they continue to help not only on domestic emergencies, but also with national security. I want to turn the microphone over to Governor Branstad, who is going to discuss the topics of many others addressed during his trip to the nation's capital.
Well, thank you, Lieutenant Governor Reynolds. And I did just return late last night from 5 days in Washington, D.C. It was a very busy trip, and I had the opportunity while I was there to attend the National Governor's Winter Meeting and meet with many federal officials. The governors discussed real solutions to common challenges that are facing our states across the nation. Governor Heineman is the chair, and the real focus was on what the states are doing in terms of economic development and how we can work on things that get results for our citizens in terms of jobs and growing family incomes. I was glad that we had also several productive meetings with executive branch officials as well, and also I met with the Iowa congressional delegation. Throughout the trip, I sought opportunities to work on things that would grow family incomes, create jobs, and nurture long-lasting careers in our state. Sometimes that simply means getting the federal government out of the way so that innovative and hardworking Iowans can thrive in careers they want and increase their family incomes. One of those meetings was with the Department of Labor on farm labor issues. And as one that grew up on a farm and worked on a farm as a young person, I understand how devastating some of those federal rules could be to our family farmers. Another common theme during the meetings was concern shared by many governors that federal deficits and debt levels are just unsustainable and are a real drag on our economy. We need an effective and efficient federal government so that our families and businesses can prosper and so that private sector businesses feel confident about investing and creating jobs. Here are some of the highlights of some of our discussions. Thursday afternoon, we had constructive conversation with General Temple and General Walsh from the United States Army Corps of Engineers. I was really encouraged about that meeting. The Corps has not always been as responsive to governors as they are at this time. We discussed the need to adequately prioritize flood control as a top priority in the Missouri River management, and the fact that this is an area where the federal government can be more effective. And we also talked about such things as making that temporary level at Hamburg permanent, and our interest in working with them on that and many of the other levees to protect our citizens in western Iowa from a repeat of what happened last summer. We also discussed the ongoing repairs and recovery priorities on the Missouri River, and we also appreciated, I expressed my appreciation for the cooperation we received as we fought the flood last summer, and the fact that thanks to the reinforcement and work both of the Army Corps of Engineers, the National Guard, and others, the levees did hold in places like Council Bluffs. We did have some places where we had breaches, but we also had some great successes. The conversation provided an opportunity to discuss ongoing recovery efforts also in Cedar Rapids and Iowa City from the 2008 flooding, and the need for a Des Moines River flow study that's important to protect the greater Des Moines area, something that the Mayor of Des Moines and I have discussed recently. We also discussed the value of the Rock Island Arsenal and the importance of the Mississippi to the movement of Iowa goods and services to national and global customers. I also met, as I mentioned, with the U.S. labor officials to discuss ongoing concerns about the rules affecting youth in agriculture, and we also discussed priorities on helping the workforce of the future to grow family incomes and jobs in areas where labor department can be helpful to us in preparing the workforce for the future. We discussed export opportunities with the head of the Export-Import Bank, and this is something that can be very beneficial to as many of our smaller companies as well as some of the larger ones that have done a lot of export-import business. And we see a significant opportunity for more Iowa small businesses to get into the exporting business. We also discussed how Vice President Xi's visit has such great opportunity to grow our Iowa exports and also Chinese investments here in Iowa. I also had the opportunity to host a bipartisan discussion on the importance of international trade, which included ambassadors from several foreign countries and also leaders of our national trade efforts. This is four governors sponsored that last year. I was one of the four that got a chance to do that this year. In a panel discussion at the Urban Institute, I discussed the importance of education reform to empower our young people to succeed in the competitive global economy and to develop careers of the future. On a related topic, the state of Iowa today will be seeking a waiver from the No Child Left Behind Act, and passage of our education reform level at the state is very critical to the success of that waiver, because the U.S. Department of Education and Arnie Duncan has made it real clear the states that are going to get waivers are the states that are instituting accountability and assessments to make sure that we are focusing on improving the quality of instruction and the achievement of students. At the forum, I also discussed our Healthiest State in the Nation initiative, which was also a main highlight of the National Governor's Committee on Health and Human Services, which I chaired on Sunday morning. Laura Jackson, who's a key leader from Wellmark here in Des Moines, did a great job of highlighting our Healthiest State in the Nation initiative, and she had slides showing how obesity in America has just grown and grown and grown, and how if we don't get people to take ownership of their own health and reverse this trend, our country is headed for big, big troubles. And at least in Iowa, we have a strategy, a public-private partnership to deal with it. And many other governors came up to me afterwards indicating their interest, and including the governors of Illinois and Minnesota possibly competing with us on that. During the trip, I also became chair of the Midwest Governors Association. One of the presenters was a Korean woman who from Minnesota who has a very successful company, and we're hopeful to get her as one of the presenters at our Iowa Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit next year. So I talked to her about that, and we're excited about that as well. My agenda for the Midwest Governors Association over the next year will focus on highlighting the economic success stories here in the Midwest, our great work ethic and education system, and seeking ways to increase domestic energy production and maintain and or reduce our energy costs for businesses and families. And one of our advantages is low-cost, reliable energy is critically important to growing the good jobs of the future and revitalizing manufacturing. I want to return to the subject that Lieutenant Governor Reynolds discussed, and that is the proposed cuts in the Air National Guard. This was an area that we governors of all parties, both Republicans and Democrats, spoke out very loudly about. And in fact, I, as you know, I'm co-chair of the this Governor's Council that meets with the Pentagon, and we met yesterday afternoon at the Pentagon with Leon Panetta and also with the people from Homeland Security. And given the vast experience of the Guard and the cost effectiveness of the Guard over the active duty, it just makes more sense to make more of the reductions in the active force. And in fact, the other areas of the military are doing that. The exception is the Air Force. And we brought that up. And also, when the Council of Governors was formed, the compact with the governors was that governors would be consulted on things that were going to affect the National Guard. Governors were not consulted. Governor Gregor, who's my co-chairman, was very livid about this. I guess the strongest was Governor Abercrombie, who is the governor of Hawaii, served 20 years on the Armed Forces Committee, and he spoke very eloquently about how he thought this was a big mistake and really needs to be reconsidered. Also, the adjutant generals representing the states, including our Adjutant General Tim Orr, who goes with me to all those meetings and serves as an advisor, they have also taken a very proactive position on this. And you see the letters, and literally, and this doesn't happen very often in this day and age, literally every governor that was at the governor's meeting and others that even weren't there have signed on this letter. I think 49 governors have signed the letter to Secretary Panetta, which I think we made available to you. And then you also have the letter signed by all the adjutant generals. So this is a pretty rare situation where you have everybody together on an issue like that. The Air Guard prioritization was also a main topic of that discussion with the governors. I was pleased that Secretary Panetta, who, as you know, is relatively new in this job as Secretary of Defense, came in, just recently, indicated this was a work in progress, to use his term, work in progress. We hope that means that they will take another look at it and look at other more cost-effective ways to prioritize and meet the budget requirements that they're facing. During the meeting, we also discussed with Administrator Fugate from FEMA, first of all, the help that they had given us and the fact that we were able to get the reimbursement for the road and bridge damage in western Iowa, but we also talked about some of the issues that are still pending and some appeals that are going on regarding Cedar Rapids and Iowa City recovery projects that are before FEMA. And some of those we're hopeful can be overturned on appeal, and others don't look very likely from his remarks. But with that, it was a very busy time. But I think it was very productive. Of all the governor's meetings I've gone to, I felt this was one of the most productive, and I want to give Governor Heineman credit for the issues that he really chose to focus on, primarily that being economic development. But then also we had that opportunity to focus on the health issues with the Health and Human Services Committee.
While you were gone, the president of the University of Northern Iowa announced that Malcolm Price Lab School will be closed on June 30th. Do you support that decision?
First of all, I have a great deal of respect for President Allen. I think he's doing a great job. I respect he's in the best position to put together a strategic plan for how to prepare teacher education for the future and meet the needs and collaborate and work with more school districts. I think change is never easy, and I give him credit for having the courage to make the change and adjustments necessary to improve clinical education for new teachers. So I support President Allen and the Board of Regents. I believe that it's appropriate that they're the closest to this and in the best position to make this decision. And I know it's never easy when you make a dramatic change like this, but I respect and appreciate his courage and his commitment to making the University of Northern Iowa an even better school for the future.
Governor, you said the Midwestern Governors Association agenda, you stressed the need for increased domestic energy production.
Right.
If you're talking about the Midwest, increasing domestic energy production in the Midwest, is that a specific endorsement for nuclear?
Well, it's kind of all of the above. We talked about, first of all, Iowa and the Midwest are leaders in renewable. We're 20% of our electricity is generated by wind energy. We're also the leader in ethanol and biodiesel. We also have been very supportive of the Hyperion project in South Dakota, which would be the first oil refinery that's been built in this country in 30 years. We think there's also some benefit in nuclear being a low-cost, reliable source for the future as well. Natural gas and fracking, and also North Dakota, as you know, has really become a boom area because of what they've done in terms of oil production there. So we see the Midwest as an area where, and also you've got also fracking going on in Ohio and some of the states in the eastern part, and in Michigan as well. So these are all areas that we see, and we see it go hand in hand with revitalizing manufacturing. If we can have low-cost, reliable energy, that's one of the best things we have going for us in attracting more jobs in manufacturing.
Republican presidential candidates and Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives have been pressing to get rid of the so-called czars in President Obama's administration. It appears Democrats in the Iowa Senate.
I thought the Bolsheviks got rid of the czars. But, I think we should too, by the way, but that's another story. But the czars went out in 1918.
So you think we should get rid of the so-called drug czar at the state level?
Well, that's a different situation. What they're talking about at the federal level is these unconfirmed appointees.
One of which is the head of the National Office of Drug Control Policy, which is the same as the governor's.
Right, but ours is confirmed. Our state drug control office is confirmed, and it goes through the normal processes. I think it is beneficial to have a focus on drugs, and we know we've had some real problems here now with these synthetic drugs. That, we had a tragic death that occurred as a result of that. There's all kinds of designer drugs that are being created, and I think we need to continue to be vigilant and stay on top of that. And I think having a focus of working with local law enforcement and working with local communities in both the prevention and interdiction of drug abuse makes sense.
Do you see the value, however, of reassigning those duties to the Department of Public Health and Department of Public Safety and saving money, saving red tape?
Well, first of all, most of there's I think the state appropriation is like $290,000. It's very small. There's a significant amount of federal dollars that they administer. So, but I do think there is some sense of having a focus. And I know local law enforcement and local organizations that have worked on substance abuse appreciate the support and the help they've received from the Office of Drug Control and the coordination that goes through that. So I think we've got to be very careful about that and recognizing that the costs for the state are relatively small, but there is a lot of federal resources that agency is able to help local governments administer.
And they couldn't get if they
Well, I don't know, but I guess I really question what is the benefit of splitting it up and diffusing it as opposed to having a focus on controlling illegal drugs. I think that's important, and I think that's an issue that should not be diminished. I think it's a real threat to the health and well-being of our citizens. We're seeing more now also of people getting prescription drugs and misusing them, as well as these synthetic drugs and new designer drugs. And so this drug situation continues to be a very significant threat to the health and well-being of our citizens, especially to young people.
Can you elaborate on why you support Glass's plan to ask for the No Child Left Behind waiver?
Yes. Well, first of all, No Child Left Behind is a national kind of one-size-fits-all system. I think it makes a lot more sense for Iowa to have its own accountability system that will do a better job of preparing teachers and evaluating teachers to make sure we have great teachers and we're assisting those that need improvement, as well as focusing on how we can improve student achievement and measure student achievement in a fair and objective way. And I think we're in a much better position to be able to do that as a state than to have to adhere to the one child left behind situation, which is really, most people in education feel is really kind of designed to meet failing urban schools and doesn't really take into consideration the unique situations that we have in Iowa with a lot of rural school districts.
What do you think about the claims that have come forward from the House and the Senate on education reform? They've removed quite a bit of the items that you would call for.
Well, I think we've got to be, we should not be afraid to be bold and do good things that are going to really dramatically improve education. And this is one area where I happen to agree with what the president said yesterday when he met with the governors and what Arne Duncan has insisted, and that is we need to dramatically improve education. The president pointed out that we have slipped as a nation. We are not competing effectively for the really great jobs of the future if we don't have good education, especially STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we need to make sure that we're preparing our students for those jobs and that we have demanding and rigorous standards, that we have effective assessments aligned with it, that we have a good evaluation system, and that we're measuring how well our teachers are doing, and then also we're measuring the achievement of our students and making adjustments and changes there. So I believe that watering down our aggressive educational reform is a mistake, and I'm very hopeful that when the representatives and senators get a chance to vote on this, they will pass a bold education reform agenda. Now, I feel very strongly about this. This is why we had the Education Summit. This is why we've had all of these forums around the state, all these town hall meetings. And if you look at what Iowans are saying in the Iowa poll, they support bold and dramatic reforms in education. They recognize that Iowa cannot afford to be complacent any longer. And I am disappointed that we don't have something more aggressive out of, I'm appreciative that they've moved forward, but I'm disappointed that they haven't chosen to take on some of the establishment and status quo that wants to resist change. We have been complacent too long. We cannot be afraid to make these changes. And I can tell you, as I talk to other governors, I come back from 5 days in Washington, D.C., and talk to the president, to Arne Duncan, to Republican and Democratic governors, and we all are on the same boat on this. And we recognize, yeah, there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of people who want to protect the status quo, want to protect their power base, but this is not fair to our kids. We got to do something that's going to really make a difference for the educational opportunities of our children.
What in particular have the House or Senate done that have watered down your proposal?
Well, I'm going to go into all the details because I think you know that, and it's been adequately covered, but the point is that we put together a bold and comprehensive reform package, and we're appreciative that significant portions of it have emerged from committees, but as you pointed out, significant portions of it have been deleted. And I think it's a mistake not to be bold and to pass significant reforms this year.
What's the likelihood that, you're obviously quite fervent on this subject.
Yep.
What's the likelihood that this could become part of the end game for shutting down the session?
Well, first of all, this is too important and too comprehensive for it to be some kind of a deal. It needs to be something and that's the reason why I'm very pleased with the broad-based public support that we see for our education reform. And obviously, the Lieutenant Governor and I have invested a lot of our time and energy into this, as has Jason Glass and Linda Fandel and many others that have worked very diligently on this. And we want to continue to work on this throughout the session. We need to continue to educate and inform people of why these bold reforms are important and why they've made a difference in the states that have taken action. Iowa has waited way too long. While other states have passed bold and significant initiatives, we haven't, and we're paying a price for that. It's not fair to our kids for us to continue to be timid.
Governor, have you heard from businesses, Chamber of Commerce's and the like, in regard to the large number of businesses that will be excluded from the property tax because of the TIF issue? And if so, is there a fix to that you see on the horizon?
Well, I really find it kind of interesting that last year the big complaint was, oh, you're going to kill our budgets because you're going to reduce the tax in these TIF districts. Well, the facts are we listened and we recognize that these TIF districts, well, they should end. They're supposed to end. And when they do end, they will get the benefit of it. In the meantime, so we don't mess up their bonding scheme, they get the benefit of that. So you can't have it both ways. So we have some people that last year complained about our proposal, so we made the change and we did what they wanted, and that is we said that as long as they're in the TIF district, they'll be able to tax it at 100%. When the TIF district goes off, then they'll be taxed the same as everybody else. Now, they've gotten the benefit of being in the TIF district, and now they're saying, no, we want the benefit of not being in the TIF district. I guess the point that I would make is this. TIF is an economic development tool that can be effective, but in some cases have been misused and overused. And why has it been done? Because our commercial property tax is so high, and because we're uncompetitive. And so we have a solution to permanently reform and change that. And I understand that in going through that process, we're going to go through, the inequities today are great. Our plan over 8 years will correct that. And that's the reason why it's critically important that we do it and that we pass this permanent change and not just play around the edges as has been done too often.
You think this would put pressure to end the TIF districts? Is that what?
I think there is a benefit to having TIF districts for a very focused, specific purpose. But if you see what happened in Johnson County, and you see they use a TIF district to do some perverse things, move a retailer from one town to another in the same county, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Then there's also been situations where the purpose for a TIF district has been completed, and then they've continued it. Those are the kinds of things that are wrong and need to be changed. So my position is that TIF is a tool that needs to be used judiciously for the intent that it was set up, and that is to help revitalize blighted urban development areas. But it has been, some cases, you have whole towns. They've TIF'd the whole town. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Would it make sense?
Quickly, Rod, then Lynn, and then we go.
You referenced the discussion with the president about the training young people for jobs. The Senate passed a $20 million plan to help community colleges with retraining and tuition and other aspects. That wasn't in your budget. Is that something you see a need for and the possibility of approving?
Well, as you know, we have a very effective job training program in Iowa. It started actually in 1983, the first year that I was governor, the industrial job training program. And I guess my feeling is I think that's a good program. I think there's maybe ways that we can improve on it. I don't know that we have to create a new program to do that, because I think already we have one of the most effective job training programs in the country.
Senate Democrats continue to say that they're not going to act on your property tax plan until you act on the earned income tax credits. Can you tell me what's the path to the solution here?
I think the path of the solution is let's do them together. Let's do it together. Let's work together. I have indicated a willingness, if we can get permanent commercial and industrial property tax relief and protect homeowners and agriculture property and at the same time, I'm willing to consider the earned income tax credit. And I'm certainly willing to consider that all in one bill if that's the way they want to do it. But I think we need to work together on it and not play politics, but instead try to find solutions. And my focus is on jobs, and I know that we have some impediments in our tax structure to job creation, and I'm committed to trying to reduce those impediments and work with everybody, both the House and the Senate, to get that done.
Their argument is you can't be trusted though, because you
Oh,
did
come
that
on.
twice last year.
I told them, I told them the same thing last year that I told them this year, and that is, I'm interested in bringing more jobs to Iowa and reducing the tax impediments to that. I've indicated that, no, I'm not going to just assign that in light of the track record of the last 30 years where the legislature has failed again and again and again to address commercial property tax relief. I'm not going to just totally do that on faith. That's why I said I'm very willing to work with them, and even if they want to have it in the same bill, they're both tax related, I'm certainly willing to work to see that that gets done. But I did make it extremely clear last year that that was not something I was going to accept on its own without the commercial property tax. And obviously, commercial property tax didn't get done last year. If it gets done this year, I think there's a good chance that the earned income tax credit can be a part of that.
We got to
But
go,
you
we're
also
behind.
said that it didn't create jobs and the state couldn't afford it. You didn't say it in context of property tax.
Well, I did. It was in that. It was in the message too. It was in the message too. I understand that it does provide some additional income for some lower income people, but it isn't something that's really a driver of investors and businesses that's going to create jobs. But I do understand the reason why people feel there is some benefit to it. So I'm interested and willing to work with them to get that done, along with our permanent commercial property tax reform for all classes of property.